Hello. So this is Damien of Modern Herbalist speaking to you here from England, and I do apologise if it's a bit noisy outside. But welcome back to the channel, and I actually wanted to produce a kind of more reflective piece today, trying to answer the question, why herbalism? Why herbalism? And for many of you, this question may not even need answering, because perhaps it comes to you completely naturally. Perhaps you're just a really green-thumbed person and you love the outdoors and nature and working with plants, or perhaps you have a family of gardeners or herbalists or farmers or something like this. So there are many of you, doubtlessly, for whom this question need not even be addressed, really. But there are a number of people, and I would actually count myself amongst them, for whom herbalism was not a particularly obvious hobby or business choice. And I'm really trying to answer this for those people, or rather, I'm trying to answer the question, why herbalism for anyone, really, for anyone who may be interested. Because I do actually think it's an activity with potential universal appeal and universal benefits. So I just want to think about that a little today, okay? So it seems to me that there are primarily two categories of answers to the question, why herbalism? But first I want to outline, again, why it might not be immediately obvious to people. So I grew up on the outskirts of London, and have had sort of a dual life in the country and the city, and I've experienced sort of a bit of both worlds, if you like. But a number of people I know, friends I know, acquaintances I've had over the years who are city folk, to them a hobby like herbalism might seem a bit quaint or outdated or not particularly obvious. And it's partly just because of technology and our exposure to the urban density in the city, the development of tech like AI and things like this. So on the one hand, it just seems outdated to many people, I think. But also, I think due to the sort of social pressure cooker that is the big city, where we're all very much in close proximity. Celebrity culture is very rife, pervasive, and so on. People tend to be more interested in these sort of power careers, that are going to make them lots of money or fame, things like, finance or big tech or the arts or academia. It's worth pointing out, I have an academic background as well, and formerly trained in philosophy, actually, and in a way you could think of this as a kind of philosophy I'm doing right now. But nonetheless, a lot of people in the cities, and people generally, are interested, in these sort of power careers and so forth. And something like herbalism might seem a bit, again, quaint or simple or outdated or cutesy even, and wouldn't be especially obvious as a hobby or career choice to many people. But I want to pitch it again as having, or think about it as having, I think, a kind of universal potential appeal. And I think the reasons for that fall into two categories. And the two categories are psychological reasons and economic reasons. So, on the one hand, the psychological reasons. This may be a fairly obvious thought to many people, but on the one hand, it is just an unambiguously, I think, very therapeutic, calming, relaxing hobby with a high sense of reward, I think, because it's something where, starting with very little, you can put in a little bit of sustained effort, and as with any organic or plant-based product, reap increasing rewards over time for very minimal but sustained effort. So it's something with a long-term horizon, that you build over time, right? Growing your herb collection, harvesting them, and that's just very rewarding and therapeutic. And the process of growing something, tending to it, maintaining it, keeping an eye on it, again, working with something natural and organic is just, I think, very calming, relaxing, and therapeutic. So there's that. But there's a further psychological argument I think can be made, namely that actually urbanity, the urban condition, is a relatively recent development certainly in the history of the planet, and certainly in human history as well. And to a very considerable degree, I think we are primed to be among nature, to be, to live really in smaller bands of people in a more natural environment. And I think for evolutionary psychological reasons, again, big city imposes a lot of psychological burdens on people that are, that we're not totally adapted for, because in our evolutionary history, we wouldn't have had these big urban dwellings. And I think working with plants and nature and gardening, things like that, is just a little way to reclaim some of our a connection with our ancestry, really, and a natural environment that we are perhaps suited to. And not everyone might feel that, but a lot of people, I've met a lot of people, and I'm one of them, who feel a sense of psychological comfort from being amongst nature and working in a natural environment. And I think there's something very primordial there. So there are some psychological reasons. I think it's very therapeutic, and I think we are disposed to be quite comfortable among nature and working with nature. There's something, again, primitive about it in our psychological roots. So much for the psychological reasons. But economic reasons, and again, this might seem very bizarre to someone like working in finance or something like this. Why herbalism from an economic point of view? Well, it's actually something that is open to all of us and highly scalable, and requires essentially incredibly minimal startup capital. So think about it like this. What you're doing when you're growing herbs or plants is you're actually adding new value to the economy. I think one of the greatest myths about economics is just that we have the economy and it's just like a static pie, and all that really matters is how we divide up the pie, and it's kind of a fixed amount, and we just need to think about how to divide the pie differently. I think that's an extraordinarily false idea, because I do think we actually add new value to the economy, and actually growing plants is a perfect illustration of that. Because essentially when you're growing a plant, what's happening is you're creating a new product, let's say oregano herb, whatever you can use for cooking, that adds value to people's lives. People will pay money for it, it's worth something in monetary value. And you have created that, or rather, it has been created essentially purely by the sun and a bit of water and time. That's it. Sun, time, bit of water. That's it, really. Because actually, the sun is a constant source of new value. Because if you think about the Earth as an energy system, there's always new energy being added to the economy of Earth, if you like, merely by virtue of the existence of the sun. Plants photosynthesizing and growing into a product that we enjoy derives its value from the sun and from time. So you're creating new value, or rather the sun and time are conspiring to create, with a little bit of guidance and maintenance from a gardener, you are creating new value, okay? And what does this mean? It means that actually, even starting with very little, you can produce value, essentially, from your point of view, almost out of nothing. So think about it this way, you don't even need to buy seeds. I mean, go find someone who will give you an oregano cutting, and plant it, and then wait, and there you go. And you've just, that was a near free investment that over time is going to grow and produce value, and then you can take copies of it, you can take other cuttings of it and plant them and grow it and propagate it and multiply, potentially exponentially, your little business just from home. And you can just put it on a windowsill. And so with virtually no startup capital at all, you can multiplicatively grow an industry from home, just with the sun and time, with virtually no startup capital. And so it's something that's available to everyone. And the more I've been thinking about it this way, I've been driven really to propagate my herbs as much as possible and as early as possible. Because again, think of it like an investment. It's something that if you start earlier, if you propagate earlier, you're going to maximize your long-term yield. Okay, so start early, propagate early, multiply early, and you're going to end up with the maximum long-term result. Again, you don't even need a garden. Like, I have a little garden here, but actually I'm not even using it for my herbs. I probably will in future, or maybe I'll plant something bigger. But at the moment I've actually got it indoors because it's a little more convenient for me to work with. You can just put herbs on your windowsill, with a bit of sunlight, again water, it's perfectly sufficient, and just grow a little factory inside your home from scratch. So I think there's actually a very powerful economic argument that is universal. It's universally applicable to all of us. Anyone can start this just in their room, almost anyone can start this. The question is the limiting factor is going to be the time commitment that you put into it, and whether you're successfully able to, again, if you're thinking about turning it into a business, being able to sell your products. But, even if you're just doing it as a hobby and using herbs for tea or cooking yourself, again, that's still value you've provided to yourself, and then you could save money on buying tea or buying cooking herbs or whatever. So, and there are of course edible plants as well. So even if you don't plan to sell the thing, you're still gaining essentially like free value from the sun. And from that point of view, it's almost like a no-brainer investment for just about anyone, right? So I think in addition to the psychotherapy of the thing and whether you just enjoy it, there is, I think, an extremely powerful and universally applicable economic argument that I think more of us should be utilizing, and I don't frankly know why more people aren't doing it. I think it's just something as a society we've sort of fallen out of touch with, but it's a perennial human activity for a reason. Growing plants or farming, it's a perennial human activity. We've been doing this for thousands of years, and I think because it has such universal applicability. So anyway, there are some thoughts on why herbalism, psychological reasons, hobbyism, and I think a very powerful economic argument as to why we could all afford to be modern herbalists, okay? So there's just some thoughts for you, and good to see you all as well and everything. I don't plan on being on camera too much, but obviously if I have some stuff to say to you in a kind of direct way like this, I might go on camera a bit more. But in any case, see you next time, folks. Take care.